We're trying to tell you that the entire planet is about to be destroyed. And we're all 100% for sure gonna fucking die!
People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction.
2023, the hottest year ever on Earth. It is the year records were shattered all around the globe. The planet's weather on overdrive. Extreme heat baking both hemispheres on a scale not seen before. Deadly tornadoes, hurricanes, and an endless barrage of atmospheric rivers. The skies over New York City turning an eerie orange as toxic wildfire smoke blanketed the East Coast.
What can be one of the coldest places on Earth is on fire. Gigantic infernos burning across Siberia on an unprecedented scale, a climate catastrophe. The wildfires burning in Russia now are bigger than all the fires raging across the globe combined. 10 times more fires are burning than usual. The fires are releasing record quantities of carbon dioxide. This year, already more than Britain's entire annual CO2 emissions, based on an estimate by a European Union agency. With increased temperatures now believed to be inevitable, Yakutia's massive fires are likely to only get worse. Scientists say another sign of how fast and how drastically the planet's climate is changing.
Around the globe, records set in nearly all categories, from rainfall to water temperatures to all-time scorching heat.
The world is experiencing record-shattering heat.
India suffered its hottest March in more than 100 years.
The heart of England, today hotter than the Caribbean and Western Sahara.
Hot made history again today.
And as the mercury rises, so too does the death toll.
Hospital admissions rising, a deadly sign of what's to come.
The body can't cool down anymore at all.
The heat wave turning deadly now.
It starts to cook from the inside out.
The skin all over our body burns, and sometimes we feel like we might faint.
Record-breaking heat waves in northwest India and Pakistan are 100 times more likely because of climate change. That's according to a Met Office study. Temperatures once predicted to happen every 300 years could now be experienced 3 times a decade.
Outdoors in northern India is like the inside of an oven. Dozens have died of heat stroke across India, but millions of workers cannot afford to stop. Heat waves are not uncommon in South Asia, but this year they started earlier than usual and have been more harsh and frequent.
The prolonged high temperatures above 40 degrees in Uttar Pradesh and eastern Bihar have already killed nearly 100 people.
A brutal heat wave has hit Pakistan, with daily temperatures hitting more than 50 degrees Celsius. Pakistan has now turned out to be one of the hottest countries on the planet. The unprecedented heat storm has led to a severe water shortage. Today, millions of people are now staring at a major food crisis.
Las Vegas poised to tie its all-time heat record, 117 degrees this weekend. On the Strip, even the pavement is dangerous. Nevada's only level 1 trauma center is reporting a troubling rise in severe burns from the superheated streets.
The pavement can heat up to 160 to 170 degrees, and all it takes is a couple of seconds of your skin being exposed to that to create a second-degree burn.
Unable to get up, the hot pavement seared through his pants, causing third-degree burns, which required surgery. Yet another casualty of the brutal summer heat that has the potential to be the deadliest yet.
It's now been a month of temperatures over 110 degrees. It's so hot out here, not even the cactuses are surviving.
They literally can't function, and the way I describe it is they start to suffocate.
Here's how. A saguaro uses photosynthesis, but they do half of it at night when it's supposed to be cooler. But this month, it's barely ever dropped below 90 overnight. So just like when we're sleeping, when the cactus is supposed to be recovering, they're really roasting.
New Year's rang in with thousands of records shattering across Europe. At least 8 countries had their warmest January day ever. Climate change responsible for warming Europe twice as fast as the other continents, making winter heat waves more likely. Back home, things were no better. A siege of atmospheric rivers lashed the West Coast through March. The California flooding would become the first of the billion-dollar disasters to strike the United States this year.
The sudden deluge, historic. The city struck with more than a month's worth of rain in just 6 hours.
Look how high the water is, almost 4 to 5 feet.
Before I know, it's up to my knees, and my neighbors and I, we all had to figure out what to do.
That's happening in every corner of the U.S., from Fort Lauderdale's staggering floods in April to September, when Brooklyn got 30 days of rain in just 3 hours. That swamped LaGuardia Airport and subway lines across the city.
The first ever hurricane-force wind warning issued for California's central coastline, as wind gusts over 80 miles per hour are felt in Northern California.
Climate change is driving both these events and the overall trend, with the most destructive floods happening 3 times as often as they once did. Floods causing more than $1 billion in damage hit the U.S. on average every 19 months between 1980 and 2009. But since 2010, they're now happening an average of every 6 months. Last year, there were 4.
I just never have ever in my 40 years seen it like this.
And that is not hyperbole. Climate change is amplifying and accelerating the physics of the water cycle. So the more that humans heat the planet, the thirstier the atmosphere gets, evaporating more water, often dumping that water more quickly, and sometimes all on one community.
Tonight, another powerful storm pummeling California.
During these storms, people often seem to underestimate the power of water.
They absolutely do. Water can kill, and so be very, very cognizant of rushing water, especially in vehicles.
The airport there once again canceling all flights, leaving travelers scrambling. In Ventura County, portions of Highway 101 also flooded. Traffic backed up on the major interstate as crews worked to pump water off the roadway. And just north, much of Refugio State Park underwater and now closed to the public after these once majestic palm trees came crashing down. This all comes after the deadly atmospheric rivers that pounded California 2 weeks ago. The series of back-to-back storms taking a toll on the state's infrastructure.
Even the city's infrastructure upended, ravaged roads and shuttered interstates, trolleys at a standstill.
The current infrastructure is not built to handle the climate change as it's occurring right now.
Further highlighting the need to adapt is an analysis from nonprofit climate research group First Street Foundation. It found that previously rare floods are happening up to 12 times more often in the areas shaded in the darkest blue, like along the Gulf Coast, where some towns in Texas this week got more than a foot of rain, triggering more widespread flooding.
When spring arrived, so did the tornadoes. The strongest and most devastating twister of the year was a ferocious EF4 tearing through Rolling Fork, Mississippi, carving a 59-mile path across the state and packing winds as high as 195 miles per hour.
More than 24 people are dead, several missing from powerful tornadoes that ripped through Mississippi and Alabama. The twister striking after dark, the night sky lit up by bursting transformers and lightning. Storm chasers joining residents and first responders, combing through the rubble of homes. Looking at the devastation, one Mississippi resident said, "There's nothing left."
But what we're looking at here is just utter devastation, Jim. Structures that have just been reduced to rubble. One local official says that his town looks like a landfill, and it really does. There's just debris stretching out for miles here. It is really hard to say this, but it doesn't seem like any of the town really was able to escape any of the damage.
At least 12 tornadoes reported, cars and even tractor trailers sent flying.
Just days later, a 2-day tornado outbreak spawned the third largest outbreak in U.S. history. Tornadoes and severe storms continuing to take a deadly toll across the country, with a 6-day multi-state outbreak in June, stretching from Wyoming to Kentucky. The second half of 2023 started with wildfire smoke driven by a record-shattering Canadian wildfire season. On June 7th, the Big Apple, choking under skies, turned an apocalyptic orange. Both Chicago and New York had the dubious distinction of worst air quality in the world during that hazy week. Milwaukee and Buffalo also setting records for worst air quality ever recorded. Climate change making wildfire smoke outbreaks more frequent. In 100 years of record keeping, 4 of the worst wildfire seasons in British Columbia happened in the past 7 years. As northern cities suffocated, Southern cities broiled under relentless days of dangerous heat. At the end of July, Phoenix hitting a record 31 straight days of 100 degrees or hotter. The previous record, just 18 days. Meanwhile, Miami melted for months. Extreme heat combining with tropical humidity resulted in 46 straight days, registering a heat index over 100 degrees. It was just one of more than a dozen U.S. cities to have their hottest summer on record. San Antonio, El Paso, and New Orleans also joining the ranks. And then, on August 8th, reports of absolute chaos and devastation began streaming out of the island of Maui in Hawaii. Fierce winds roaring up to 80 miles per hour, fueling a firestorm that ripped through the historic Lahaina district, killing more than 100 people on the island, making it the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Drier than usual conditions, combining with destructive winds, knocked down power lines, contributing to the catastrophe. The rebuilding process expected to take years. After a relatively quiet start to the hurricane season, things fired up in late August when Hurricane Idalia rapidly intensified over the Gulf of Mexico, striking North Florida as a high-end Category 3 with winds of up to 125 miles per hour.
Otis unexpectedly intensified. It went from a 50-mile-an-hour tropical storm into an explosive Category 5 hurricane with winds at 165 miles an hour at landfall. That happened in less than 24 hours. Otis is the first Eastern Pacific hurricane to ever make landfall as a Category 5 intensity there in Mexico in modern history.
After Hurricane Otis ripped through the beach resort town a week ago, destroying infrastructure and flooding streets and homes. Up and down the coastline, the horrifying evidence of Otis's wrath. Boats thrown like toys along the shore.
Everyone in Acapulco was thinking, okay, we have to ride out a tropical storm. We have a rainy day. We have windy conditions. We'll stay inside. Then the storm went up to 165 mile per hour winds. It went over, this ocean maritime heat wave, climate change, yes, El Nino, yes, check. And this thing exploded. None of our forecast models saw this coming. No forecasters saw this coming. There wasn't one storm chaser that went down here for this storm, and they all would have been here if they knew it was coming. So residents had no time to prepare for one of the worst storms ever to make landfall in our world's history in a metropolitan area.
Government officials unveiling a $3.4 billion recovery plan, but experts estimate the cost of the damage could be as high as $15 billion.
Fueled by record warm sea surface temperatures, the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season was the fourth most active in history, with 20 named storms. The brutal heat plaguing the U.S. was now taking its toll on the southern hemisphere. The heat index in Rio de Janeiro hitting an astonishing 138 degrees, the highest ever recorded there. And for the third year in a row, deadly tornadoes ripping through the south just days before Christmas. Climate change-driven weather leaving its mark all around the globe.